and welcome to Comm 252. Today we're going to be discussing Chapter 3, which is the communication in the self. In this chapter, we're really discussing the self-concept. How is the self-concept different from the self-esteem? So that's one thing that you need to know. Self-concept is the set of expectations that you hold for yourself. So this is your values, this is where you want to go, how do you think you should behave, and all of that reflection. Your self-esteem is your evaluation of your self-worth. Do you think that you're good? Do you think that you have what it takes to make it? That's your self-esteem. So think about when you've heard people say, oh, they have such a low self-esteem about themselves. They're thinking about that evaluation of their self-worth. Are they worthy or enough or not? So you may be thinking, how does this relate in the whole grand scheme of interpersonal communication? Well, with interpersonal, we're looking within ourselves and how we communicate with one another, with a bigger group, with our significant other, with our in and out groups. So we're thinking about that. So we have to understand the difference in our self-concept and our self-esteem. We're really going to kind of dig into that concept. How does it develop? Can we change it once it gets older? What do we need to do to become better? Once we realize what that whole expectations that we have for ourselves are, the better communicators we're going to be. Because we're going to know where we really strive and where we may have problems and where we have things that we need to work on. Which is why I love this course so much. Because you can take your look at yourself and say, this is where I'm lacking. This is where I need to improve. And if I improve X, Y, and Z, I'm going to become better, which is what we want. And out of this course, that's what I hope that you can do. And this little business says this course can change your life, and it can, because it can change the way that you communicate, because you're looking at yourself in a much deeper way. So know the difference in that self-concept. That's self-esteem. How do they relate to one another? How do they not relate? How do they work towards one another? And how can we go above that? But for the purposes of this chapter, we're really going to dig into the self-concept. So the first thing is that you need to know how the self-concept develops. In your book, I think at the very beginning, there's a diagram, and there are two circles, and it says positive and negative. So our self-concept develops that way. Go back into chapter 1. Go back about why we have communication and why is it so important. Because for one, it's social and identity. See, our self-concept links right in with our identity. So it says, this is how we develop. So go back to that diagram again. You have your positive self-esteem or self-concept. And it goes, you do something and someone praises you and you get rewarded and you feel good. Or you do something and then on the opposite side is that you do something and it's not received well and you get negative attention and you don't feel good about yourself. So that's how the self-concept kind of develops, is a way that people are telling you and building you up. Yeah, that's good. Or you do an activity, you do a task, and the outcome comes what you think it's going to be. So of course your self-concept is going to develop, and it's going to be, this is what I'm good at because this is what happened, and you're going to feel good about it. Something else that I want us to look at is this self-fulfilling prophecy. This is so important for us to know. I always go back and think of it this way. It's almost like we make a prediction about what's going to happen. For me, sometimes I stress out about standardized tests. ACT, SAT, all of those. So I start to freak myself out and I'm like, I'm not very good at it. I don't do well. I don't know how to do it. I stress myself out. And then when I get in there to do the test, all I think of is, I'm not good at this. This is not what I'm great at. And I psych myself out. That is a self-fulfilling prophecy. How we view a task, a subject, and what happens. So if I were to go in and to think about what was so great, like to say the standardized test, the ACT, and I would go in and say, I've studied, I've done my part, I'm going to be great. I'm going to take my time. And then that happens, and then I come out with a better feeling. Whereas if I go in and I say, I'm horrible at this, this is going to be awful, this is not going to work, then it's probably not going to work because I've already set my mind ahead. So you have to think about it that way. And that links right back into the self-concept. It's our worthiness and our expectations of ourselves. I can't do this. I've never done this. This is going to be horrible. This isn't going to be good. Well, and that's that part of that negative self-concept. So think about the self-fulfilling prophecy. Get to know that term and can become one with it. I love this chapter because there's so many of these little nuances, these little theories that really pop out. Another thing that I want you to think about is to think about knowing how to change the self-concept. One of the characteristics of a self-concept is that its inability and its resistance to change. And it is because it's hard work. To change your self-concept, to change your self-esteem is hard work. So it does take time and it does resist that change, but it's certainly you can develop and change your self-concept and knowing how to do that. Our public and private selves, the faces we put on, and how do we manage those? How do we choose what to say to who and to when, right? I mean, I'm not going to use the language that I may use with my friends when I'm talking to you. I may not use the language that I would use to talk to you, to talk to my friends. So think about that. And then how do you manage those? Another key item that I really want you to focus in on is the Johari window, which is that whole disclosure, which I think is also fascinating. Who do we choose to self-disclose to? Why do we choose to self-disclose to? What are the benefits? What are the risks to do that? So really dig into those. Those are a couple of the key points that I really want you to kind of think about as you're reading through the text and getting to know that. So I'll see you guys soon. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Thanks.